We should begin in a minute. We're waiting for one member who's joining remotely. So. Okay, we'll call the meeting to order. Good afternoon, and welcome to the Committee of Adjustment. This is Urban Panel 1. We are a City of Ottawa quasi-judicial tribunal that holds public hearings, like this one, to consider planning act applications, including minor variances and zoning to the zoning requirements and consent to sever land. Our hearings are now in person at Ben Franklin Place, 101 Centerpoint Drive. We also enable remote participation by video conferencing for our registered speakers. We are live streaming on YouTube, and the video will be archived and will be made available for future viewing by the public. My name is Jay Baltz. I'll be chairing today's hearings. I'm not usually the chair, so bear with me. You can address me by my name or as chair. And with me are my fellow panel members, Arto Keklikian, Julianne Wright, Sharon Lecrier, and John Blatherwick is going to be joining us remotely shortly, we hope. The procedure for the hearings will be as followed. Listed on the agenda and appearing on screen from time to time are the applications we'll hear today. For the sake of efficiency, I may deal with agenda items in a different order. Panel members have reviewed the planning reports and any written submissions that were in support or in opposition to each of the applications. Today, we'll hear any oral submissions relating to the applications. As part of the statutory public notifications requirement, each applicant was required to post a sign on the property in question before the hearing. They also had to confirm in writing that they did so, or they'll need to swear or affirm an oath today that they fulfilled the sign posting requirements. Otherwise, we may have to adjourn or postpone the hearing. The panel may ask for a brief presentation of an application, followed by questions for the applicant and city planning staff. We'll then hear from members of the public who have registered to speak, and we also may have questions for them. Finally, the applicant, who has the burden of proof here, will have an opportunity to make their final comments in reply. So in the meeting, please address your comments to me as the chair. State your name and spell it if it's necessary, and please provide your municipal address for the record if you're going to be presenting here. All presentations are limited to 5 minutes. Any exceptions will be at my discretion. At the end of the hearing, the panel may either make an oral decision immediately, or we may reserve our decision, which means it won't be delivered today. In either case, within 10 days, the Committee of Adjustment will send the official written decision and reasons for it to all the parties participants and anyone else who has requested a copy. So does anyone have any questions about the procedure we're following today? No. So seeing none, we have several applications to hear, but first we're going to deal with some short, I see Mr. Blatherwick has joined us, so we now have the full panel. Hello, John. All right, we have several applications to hear today. We have to deal with some preliminary and procedural matters. The first one of which is declarations of interest. Any panel members with a declaration of interest?
I do, Mr. Chair.
As well. And on which one?
item number 7, I reside in the same community as item number 7, that's Nelson Street proposal. And so I will recuse myself from that item to avoid any real or perceived conflict.
Okay, thank you.
And Mr. Chair,
Sorry.
myself as well.
Oh, sorry, John. There you are.
Yeah, I sent staff a note yesterday, but 2272 lawn was on panel 2's agenda yesterday, and I recused myself for that because that application is for a home in my neighborhood.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? Any other conflicts? No, and I also have none. Where are we? There are no minutes to confirm for today, so the minutes will be deferred to the next meeting or one after that. And so we will now start with any items that are where there are adjournment requests or where they may be adjourned. So the first item that we're going to discuss or is raised today is item number 5 on the agenda, 1756 Scott Street. And that is the owner wants to construct a 2-story addition to the rear for a secondary dwelling unit. And they've applied originally to expand a non-conforming use, although this now will be changed to a minor variance. So who do we have here? Paul Robb. Sorry.
Jeff Kelly from Dovercourt.
Jeff Kelly. Sorry, I have to read these in the order that I'm doing them. So yes, do you want to? So we have this on the adjournment part of the yeah. So are you okay with adjourning this? We need a recirculation because there are additional we've changed from a permission to a minor variance, and also there's an additional variance for the rear yard area that needs to be added and circulated.
Yeah, so we're ready to proceed today, but we would be okay with an adjournment as well.
Yeah, and so our customary procedure is when there is a material change to what's being sought, the variance being sought, needs to be recirculated so that the public, within the notification area,
Yes,
and
understood.
the public have an idea of what the real ones are.
Understood.
So with that, the panel all in favor of adjourning sine die, which means until the circulation is done, and you will be able to arrange with staff when it will get on the agenda again after that's done. So all in favor of yes, John? Okay, so this is adjourned sine die, and we'll come back at some point.
Thank you.
Yes. Oh, certainly, sir. If you're gonna, yes, please come to the front and give your name and turn on the microphone as well.
Okay, we lived beside 1756 for 70 years. My dad lives there by himself. He's 99. We're just curious. We share the laneway. During their renovations, whatever you want to call it, will we have access to the parking?
So that's you'll
Will we find that out?
you can talk directly to Mr. Kelly here and offline outside of here and arrange that. That's not part of what we would decide.
Okay, I
But
didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, no, that's fine. And it's an important question. So
Right.
we will put the two of you together now and discuss the access
All right.
presumably outside there. So thank you very much. Right. So we've adjourned that, and this will come back on to for anybody else who is interested in this item. There'll be another notice and it will come back onto a future agenda. So we are now moving on to item 4, which is 169 Clemow Avenue. This is Mario Poulin, who's the agent for the applicant. Is he online or here? Online? All right, so we'll wait till I am.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, committee members.
Yep, thank you. So we've moved us up to the front because there are no comments received. Planning department, planning staff have no concerns, and nobody has registered to speak or sent in comments. So we are prepared to vote on it now. Do you have anything you need to say before we do that?
Nope, No, I
Okay,
think it's
so,
clear.
for the committee, any comments, any questions? Ready to vote. So to approve, item number 4, 169 Clemow Avenue, the variance to the rear yard setback. All in favor, please raise your hand. So it is approved. So item 4, 169 Clemow is approved.
Thank you very much. Have a great
Thank you.
afternoon.
Yes. So we're now going to go back into the order of the agenda, having taken care of the amendments and the streamlined application. So we're now back to item number 1, which is 493 Highcroft. Paul Robinson is the agent for the applicant. Oh, here you are.
Good afternoon, panel.
So we're going to ask for a brief presentation, and also we understand that you have issue with some of the conditions. So after the presentation, if that's still true, we can discuss that.
Thank you very much. So the application before you today is at 493 Highcroft on the east side of Highcroft in the Westboro neighborhood. Applications for consent to create 3 lots on this property, 2 of which would be semi-detached units on the north half to 2/3 of the lot, and then the southerly third to half of the lot would be a single family home, each of which would have a single car driveway and a single car garage. If the coordinator could go to the next page, please. So here's where the property is. It's in the inner urban transect. There is a single family home on the property with a circular driveway, and there are single family homes primarily around it. Next slide, please. So this is one of the issues or items that has come up in the last few days. The neighbor to the east at 490 Everard reached out to me, phoned me. I spoke with her, and also she has met on site with the builder, and the issue is about fencing. The previous owner of 493 Highcroft, from what I understand, according to Mrs. Cohen, installed some fencing, what they believe to be on the property line, in order to prevent people cutting through between the 2 streets. And it appears as though the fencing was not put exactly on the property line. The property for 493 Highcroft is outlined in red. And then there's also a chain link fence and then a board fence. And there's also an overhead bell wire. And it appears as though the overhead bell wire, the board fence, and the chain link fence, and potentially the second board fence, are actually on Mrs. Cohen's property. So that will all be rectified during the construction, and Mrs. Cohen has spoken in person with my client on this. Next slide, please. This is how the lands are to be divided. Parts 1 and part 2 would be the semi-detached units. They are 7.48 meters or 25 feet in width, and with lot areas about 228 square meters. A lot width for part 3, which is the single family home, of just over 10 meters, and a lot area of about 305 square meters. All of those are zoning compliant, so there are no variances required as a result of this application. Next slide, please. Here's the site plan. The semis are at the top of the drawing with their driveways leading out to the street, and then the single family home will have a driveway along the south edge of the property. Next slide, please. This is a front view of the property. This photo I took in, I believe, October of 2023. If you look on Street View, the Street View imagery of this area was from 2019, and the significant difference is that in 2019, approximately midway along the frontage between the edge of the road and the sidewalk, there was a lilac tree on city property. And sometime between 2019 and 2023, the sidewalks along there were ripped up and a new sidewalk was put in, and that appears to be the impetus for the lilac tree to be, have been removed. It was initially commented upon by the city forester as to why the lilac tree that they had observed on Street View was not being addressed in the tree information report. And we indicated that that had no longer existed and it's likely had been removed by the city crew when the new sidewalk was put in. Next slide, please. So one of the items that's to be discussed is a tree that is in the front yard. It's a 31 centimeter in diameter burl oak tree. It's shown here in two views. Tree number 2. So the image on the left, which is in the center of your screen, was taken from the north side of the internal driveway looking to the south. And the tree is shown on the image on the left-hand side, outlined in green. And then the second image was taken from the sort of front wall of the building looking back towards the tree itself. And you can see in the distance on that drawing, the cedar hedge, and then beyond that is Highcroft Avenue itself. So it is a 31 centimeter burl oak tree. It is leaning and it's, I believe, in fair to good condition. Next slide, please. So there have been discussions back and forth ever since, I believe, last Wednesday when the city forester first reached out to me. At that time, there were 2 issues. One was about the status of the lilac tree on the city right of way, and then the second was about wanting to retain the tree that was just in the previous photos. We've had a number of discussions with our client's arborist, myself, the city forester, Miss Linker, the city planner, and the client about what can be done on the site. The issue is that the buildings that are being proposed are all zoning compliant, and we are allowed to have a porch in front of the single family home and a walkway. And we believe that the location of the burl oak tree is not going to survive the construction. So since Miss Young reached out to us, the forester, on this, we've made some modifications to the tree planting plan and added, I believe we've added 1 net tree in total, and we've also made 1 tree to be a city tree close between the sidewalk and Highcroft Avenue itself. And we've also shifted the servicing connections for the single family home. They had previously been just to the south of the severance line between the semi and the single family home. And we've now shifted that so it's beneath the driveway, so which then opens up a greater area for planting and also allows for a greater size of tree to be in that area. One of the issues is we also have hydro wires that run parallel along the in front of the property. So there are limitations as to how big a tree can be planted there. So we're in front of you today to discuss the tree. We've come back with this design, and I believe the forester likely has some comments. We would like this to be the tree planting plan that goes forward. And we're in your hands. Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. One other comment. There is a comment. I believe it was initially condition number 10. Now it's condition number 8 because there were modifications done to the plan, to the staff report. And that comment or condition is related to the joint use and maintenance agreement. It indicates, it's not explicit in its wording, but we would like it explicit in its wording that the JUMA only applies to the semis and not to the single family home. Because JUMAs in this scenario are typically for shared roof matters. So there's only the single should not be part of that. And as we all know, joint use and maintenance agreements take time and cost money.
There was also issues with conditions 2 and 3 that.
So they're related to grading and tree planting and so forth. That's what I really wanted to discuss today.
Okay, so questions from the panel members?
I'm
No.
fine.
John, no?
Good.
Okay. I guess we should hear from planning now, from the planner, and possibly from forestry, since that is a major question here. Who is
I think she's coming online now.
Yep, there she, that's Nancy Young from.
Sorry,
Hello.
I don't know if you want to hear from the planner first, but it's up to you.
Plan is not here yet, and the major, oh, are you actually, I am so used to looking here. Okay, you want to turn on your microphone and we'll let you go first if you have any comments.
Thank you for your question. Planning staff had no concerns with regards to the severance, and we've listed our preferred conditions in the staff comments.
So I think we're going to have a discussion about the conditions probably after we go through this part, but thank you. Okay, so Ms. Young, from forestry. So the major issues that had been raised were forestry, tree related. So I guess the question for us now is whether you are satisfied with the current iteration of the tree plan.
Thank you. Yeah, it has been, we've had really great conversations with the applicant, and I think it has been improved significantly. The reason I raised the concerns is that anytime there's a protected tree outside of the zone building footprint, the strong priority is to retain that tree. And so it looks to me like there are still ways to work around this one. It's kind of in that zone that could be worked around, but so far it hasn't. We haven't seen different designs with the front porch. So I think where we are right now is a plan that could work. I mean, the planting plan does reasonably replace this tree. It's still my preference to retain it. So knowing that decisions here aren't really tied to the plans because this is only a severance, I think it's reasonable to retain the conditions in case something about the plan changes, which would then also change the planting plan or the requirements of the planting plan. So they're kind of tied together, and it's really a just in case situation if plans change in the future.
Thank you. Questions from the panel? No. I don't see anybody. Okay. Yes. Are you registered to speak? Because we do have people who are registered to speak. Yep, that's what I was just about to get to. So we had a letter of concern, but not registered to speak, from Susan Cohen, but that was her concerns were already addressed that had to do with the fences. And then we've had a letter from Michelle Prue and Eric Erratic, who also are registered to speak. And so I will invite them up to the microphone there. Yep, so you have to turn it on, and then we have your name because you submitted.
So my name is Michelle Prue. I reside at 492 behind the southern single unit. So the three issues that we could talked about, the first is the fencing. The survey is really not clear as to where it's quite a mess in that northern corner, right? There's 3 or 4 fences. So we'd like to request that survey posts be put in so we can better assess where the fences are, and also brings in the next issue. There's a hedge. If we could bring back your tree planting plan, if that's possible to bring back that slide.
Should appear in a second.
Okay. Yes, I believe, yeah, that's right. So in the top right-hand corner, so the northeast corner, there's a hedge along that back. And it's not clear where relative to the property line the hedge is. But we'd like to clarify that because we all like to retain that hedge. It's a very tall hedge that provides quite a bit of privacy between the two semis and Sue's property and our property as well. So all we're looking for, we've already spoken with the applicant. He came by and met us, which was very nice. So we've talked about that hedge, but we just want to go on record that we'd like to do everything we can to retain that hedge. So I don't see the hedge on that drawing, yet there are trees. If you look at the tree in the bottom right-hand corner, the purple tree, that's on our property. So I'm assuming that means that gets kept. So I'm worried about the fact that the hedge doesn't show up on that drawing.
I'll let you address that, but generally the hedges don't show up because it's a tree information report. and
Okay.
Directed at the trees, but the hedges are important as well. So
I was going to
When I
say,
spoke to the hedge earlier today, it identified as a tree.
Yeah.
So
that's what
that was a joke.
I was going to say that as well. And in terms of the surveying stakes, upon approval of this application by this committee, one of the items to be confirmed or cleared is the deposit of the final survey plan, and they're going to have to go out into the field and put the bars in the ground, and property owners can see where they are. This happens many times whereby especially in older neighborhoods, fence lines and property lines do not coincide. And I get the sense from what Mrs. Cohen says, this fence was put up fairly quickly, and it was maybe a weekend project by a previous owner, and everybody thought a certain point in the backyard was the property line. They did as straight a line as possible, and it's not in the correct place. And that happens all the time with applications, especially in front of this panel.
All right. And then the final comment that we submitted in the letter was it's really a courtesy. It has nothing to do with the plan because there are no variances. We've had experience with other construction in this area. There's a fairly substantial bedrock bed, and in construction that occurred in 2018, 2019, the method used to chisel the bedrock was quite disruptive for several months. Whereas a more recent example, just last year, our immediate neighbor, they used a different technique to deal with the same bedrock. The different technique involved cutting with a blade before chiseling, which made the process much, much quicker. It was a week instead of 3 months, and it was a lot less disruptive. So less vibration, less noise, less disruption. So it's just a request that we wanted to, put on the record that if possible, to have that more sophisticated method employed. And I discussed that with Mr. Hunan when he visited, and he seemed friendly to that. So that's it. Those were our concerns, right, Sue? That's it? Does that cover? Yeah.
Okay,
That covers all of our points. Thank you.
Questions from the panel for Mr. Prue? No, I am not seeing any. So it's the things we don't have jurisdiction over, I think you're already talking to the owner, so that's the right way to go. The hedge is going to be retained. That is the intent.
That is the intent.
Okay, thank you. So now we have that on the record as well. Okay, well, thank you. Thank you for your presentation. So I think we should probably discuss the conditions at this point. So what are there were one condition that you wouldn't change, which is the Juma applying just to the semi. And then why don't we take care of that first? So is planning amenable to that?
Thank you for your question. Staff have no concerns with the change of wording. In regular circumstances, it is to our satisfaction, and we wouldn't apply the Juma to this single, whether it was worded that way or not. So it's in abundance of caution, we can change the wording.
Okay. So do we have wording that we can use today?
Miss Linker I've raised this already with her, and she sort of put in an email to me the sort of wording that she's just described. If it some wording saying that the Juma is only applicable to the semi-detached units as part of this proposal.
Mr. Chair,
Mhm.
the city planning planner can provide committee staff with the wording for that condition.
So we don't have to, we can just say that to be amended.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And then there were conditions 2 and 3.
Yes, thank you. Well, condition 2 is saying that a grading and servicing and site plan be done during the 2-year period in which we are to clear conditions. And it says, designed and located to ensure the adequate protection of protected trees as identified in the tree information report. The protected trees, the tree that we are discussing here in our tree information report was not listed as a protected tree because we felt that it could not survive construction. The other issue is as well, you have a porch and then you have a walkway, and the walkway is going to need excavation. And all of these are going to be in the area where the critical root zone is for this tree. And the building location, size, and shape is all zoning compliant, and you are allowed a porch and you're allowed a walkway. So it's unfortunate that it's conflicting with this, but we are offering replacement trees above and beyond what was originally proposed. And one of the preferences that we've discovered in discussions with Ms. Young is that a tree that's on the city right of way is something that they would really like, because then they have greater protection, and we are offering to put a tree back where there had previously been a tree, and we're now replacing that street frontage view. And then on number 3, the owner shall prepare and submit a tree planting plan. We have done that, and it's more just, we were hoping for the acceptance or concurrence of that plan. But I don't know how you can really do that in the form of a condition.
I think so. The city forester has, Forester Young has spoken already and said that they would accept the plan. They still have a preference, if possible, to retain tree number 2, but have gone on the record here as saying they would accept the plan. So it sounds like those 2 conditions can just stand because the plan that they would accept doesn't include tree number 2.
That's fine. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So with that, then if there are no objections, we'll leave the conditions with the exception that condition 10 will be changed a bit to indicate it only applies to the semi-detached. Okay. Are there any questions at this point? If any final comments?
No.
All right. So we're going to reserve the decision. Yes.
Yeah.
We're reserving, John. So all in favor of reserving the decision? Yes. All right, so this will be reserved. So that means,
Yep.
well, you know what it means, but for everybody else, it will be, the decision will not be rendered today. We have a discussion after this in camera by ourselves, and then the decision will be released within 10 days in writing. And staff will have it. It will appear on the website. So thank you very much. And thank you for everybody who presented today.
Thank you very much. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Okay, to move to item 2. So we are now, let me move to item 2. Wait. One of the problems with chairing this is there are many piles of paper that all have to be kept track of. So item 2 is 315 Savard Avenue. And this is variances to construct a 4-unit low-rise apartment building. Item 2 is Mr. Bryce is the agent for the applicant, appearing online. No. Oh, there you are.
Yes.
Good afternoon.
Good
So
afternoon.
we don't really need a full presentation here. We'll leave it in your hands. There were some concerns from the neighbors, which perhaps you would like to take this opportunity to address in full. But we've already looked at all of the materials, so we are pretty familiar with the application. So please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Rod Price on behalf of the owner of 315 Savard. As Mr. Chair just alluded to, I think it sounds as though committee has a grasp in terms of what the proposal is. There's been some work, months of work that was done in a pre-application phase with staff to get to the point where we were comfortable submitting an application. So I'd like to thank staff for their work and their collaboration to get us this far. Yes, I'm aware of 2 letters of support and 1 letter of objection from the neighbor at 315 Savard. As you can tell from the application that we've submitted, for the proposed new 4-unit apartment building, the only variances we require are based on the size of the lot, in terms of the lot width and the lot size. All other zoning bylaw performance standards, coverage, height, side yard, front yard, amenity, all those performance standards can be met. And I can certainly understand the neighbor's concern in terms of shadow. However, we're approximately, I mean, if you go by the zoning, on this particular lot, not that you could, but if one were to assemble enough land, you can go up to 25 meters. And I think what we're proposing, given that this is part of the inner urban transect, it is in an evolving neighborhood. I think, the evolving neighborhood is contemplated for neighbors in transition to allow for density in 15-minute neighborhoods. And I think what we've proposed is a nice transition. You've got Montreal Road at 150 meters to the north, and you've got the Vanier Parkway, both major transit corridors in terms of bus service, about 75 meters to the west. We think it really addresses that transition in that evolving neighborhood. You've got a 3-story apartment building right across the street at 316 Savard, and backing onto a number of these properties at 310 and 308 Sear, which would back on to 313. You've got a 3-story development as well. So this neighborhood is in transition. And I think based on what is permitted in terms of zoning height, this is as least impactful is what you'll probably see. In terms of parking and whatnot, there's no on-street parking until you get up to 307 Savard on your way up to Montreal Road, and then there is on-street parking permitted. Given that it is in the urban transect and city and provincial policy trying to go to these 15-minute neighborhoods, parking is not required. So we're trying to fit this in with the policies and in terms of contributing to those 15-minute neighborhoods, and I think this does a really good job of that.
Thank you. Questions from the panel?
I have some, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Blatherwick.
Mr. Price, I'm looking at the map that we are provided with that shows the land use pattern within the 60-meter radius of your site, and I'm just wondering, in that part of this community, how many other multiple unit dwellings are built on lots of this size?
Multiple lots of this size. I couldn't tell you, to be honest with you, right off the top of my head. Just looking the street view. If you go up, are you speaking, sorry, through you, Mr. Chair, to the member specifically along Savard Street?
Mm-hmm. I'm talking the general area because, quite frankly, the information that we need as a panel is lot patterning evidence that supports your rationale for acceptance. So I'm just wondering if you have that.
I do not have that. When we were going through the pre-application and discussions with staff, it was never brought forward. It's not a mature neighborhood. So, in terms of the submission, we're trying to meet the official plan policies, which are, the neighborhood with the evolving neighborhood overlay, to come up with unique and creative ways to address both the 15-minute neighborhood and provide much needed housing for that, what they call both in the policy and the market, that missing middle. And that's what we're trying to achieve. From what I can gather in my interpretation of the policies is that, this evolving neighborhood overlay is looking to slowly transition these neighborhoods to more dense development. And I think this is a prime example of beginning that phase in an area that's been identified, which is close to arterial roads, walking to shopping and amenities. So
All right.
I'm not sure if that helps at all. Or...
I would, for myself, I quite frankly would prefer lot patterning evidence. That makes life a lot simpler for me. Anyway, it's just a suggestion in future. Provide that kind of evidence.
Duly noted. Duly noted.
It definitely helps. I mean, we don't go out and do site visits anymore, and so we rely on you guys and the department to provide us with the information that we need.
Yeah, and I guess if I can just add to that, I mean, on Savard Street, this would be the first instance, right? So I guess I'm establishing the lot pattern based on the OP policies and the zoning and what the province and the city is trying to achieve with this missing middle housing.
And out of curiosity, how much amenity open space is on the site for 4 units?
In terms of amenity space, we've got 61.3 meters where we required 60.
Okay.
And if you haven't been by the site, it's an improvement. The existing old vacant house that's there now sits right up on the sidewalk. The steps encroach onto the right of way. There's encroachments in terms of existing zoning with the neighbor on the, what would that be, the south side. So this is going to improve that neighbor's setbacks and whatnot as well. So we're able to achieve all the performance standards other than the challenge that's created by the existing size of the lot.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Price. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Mr. Bladerick. Anyone else with a question? I guess I have one. So what would be permitted to be built as of right on this lot now, if anything?
I could, sorry, through you, Mr. Chair, everything from high-rise apartments to, I mean, the lot would certainly include it. But the zoning does allow up to a height of 15 meters. And it does encourage, you know, if one were to assemble, say, from this lot to the corner, you could go as high as 25 meters according to what's on the zoning map.
Okay, thank you very much. So if there are no follow-up questions, then we'll hear from the city planner. Is that also you? No, so somebody online. There, Justin Greft, Planner Greft.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't have any more comments or concerns to add. I think it was kind of well encapsulated by Mr. Price. I will maybe just mention the current detached dwelling on the lot does have legal non-conforming rights. Detached duplexes, 3-unit dwellings are currently prohibited in that zone. I think it was maybe mentioned in one of the concerns or feedback we got from the Neighborhoods Association that it is an area that was rezoned to R5. And in R5, there is specific lot sizes required for low-rise apartments that are a bit larger than the required lot sizes for R4. So I know that the applicant has been in chats with the city as to whether, you know, should we be looking at going back down to R4, but we recommended to come through the committee to seek possibly a variance to see whether it be allowable to have a reduced lot size in order to permit the low-rise residential apartment. That said, I think I did mention it in my report, but the applicant would also be permitted to already have 3 units within the existing dwelling, and they're only looking to have 1 additional dwelling unit from what is already permitted within the existing structure on the lot. So just peace of mind.
If this were R4 rather than R5, what would be the lot size on the width and area that would be required?
I believe it's a bit larger than what he's proposing. I think from what I recall, R4 UC would be around 10 meters width. I'm not entirely sure on the size. I'd have to go check. But it is more relative to what he's proposing than what is required in the R5 zone.
Okay, thank you. Questions from anyone else on the panel? No? Okay. So we did have a number, but we have discussed or at least mentioned the letters that were received. There's listed on the sheet as a Tammy Laidlaw wishing to speak remote, but then I have a note that we have no registered speakers.
There are no registered.
No registered speakers, so Ms. Laidlaw is no longer wishing to speak. Okay. So are there anyone else who wishes to speak to this? No. And so we have considered, there were 4 letters that were received, one in support, one from the community association, not opposed with a number of suggestions, and 2 opposed, but those were already discussed. Mr. Price, do you have any final comments?
No, again, I'd like to thank staff for their collaboration to getting this forward. As Mr. Griff alluded to, you know, going the variance option is certainly preferred over a rezoning application to convert it back to R4 back when we first started this process. So, you know, staff have been very supportive and very collaborative in this approach. We really appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. So anything else? Anyone on the panel have anything else? So we are going to reserve this decision, correct? So everybody is in favor of that? Yes? Okay, so the decision will be reserved. We will have the decision for you in writing within 10 days. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, members. Have a great day.
Thank you. Okay, I'll cross off. All right, so we are now moving to item number 3, which is 295 and 297 Dovercourt. And Saba Al-Mathno, I believe, is the agent for the applicant, joining remotely.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and committee members. My name is Saba Al-Mathno from QBS Architects, 1670 Bayview Avenue, Suite 401, Toronto, Ontario. I am the client's agent.
Thank you. We need the briefest of presentations on this, but you know, cover what you feel we need to know. We have, of course, looked through the materials and have seen what was submitted.
Absolutely. If staff could kindly share the presentation that we sent.
It should be coming. Here it comes.
Thank you. So our project is located at 297 Dovercourt Avenue. It's basically what we are applying here for a consent application and semi-detached. The owners, Mrs. Lee and Mr. Chan, decided to approach this project with the semi for more affordable. They will be residing in one half of the lot with their 2 young kids and either rent or sell the other half to a family member. Our zoning is R3R and we are in the Westboro neighborhood. If you could kindly move on to the next slide. So as you can see, the existing property is single-family dwelling with a swimming pool. It's in inner urban transit and it's in a well-serviced neighborhood. Second slide, please. Sorry, the following. Thank you so much. So we're in our severance application. We will have no variances in terms of lot size, lot area, lot frontage. We comply with all of the side yard setbacks, front yard setback, rear yard setbacks, and it will result in 2 lots with equal areas of 270 square meter and width of 8.69 meters. Next slide, please. And as you can see, we have greened lots. So we have enough landscaping at the front, enough landscaping at the back. We have no comments from urban forestry. We are okay with all of the other commenting parties, including the Bell. What we are proposing here is, and that's what's resulting in the one minor variance that we are requesting, is front-facing garages. That was really a main request for the clients. She has 2 young kids, and she prefers, for safety reasons, to have an integral garage with direct access to the house, so she could keep the kids safe in the car by closing the garage door and while she unloads them one by one. So that was the reason why we are here before you to request a minor variance. We kept the garage width to the minimum, almost so it's 8 feet. The driveway is about 9 feet. And we, if you can go to the next slide, please. So we propose some architectural features to hide the fact that there is a garage door. So we introduced a canopy and another bump on one side, an L-shaped architectural feature to address this minor variance. So when we did the streetscape, there are 8 similar exactly situations and 13 different. Next slide, please. So these are some pictures of the existing house at the moment. We've already applied for a building permit. We've already submitted for site servicing. Next slide, please. This shows you the attached garages pattern on the street. So 54 properties were surveyed. 34 of them were front-facing garages or carports. Next slide, please. So these are with attached garages, front yard parking, which is 6 of them. Next slide, please. These are photos of examples of similar projects on the same street, which is exactly the same of our application. Semi-detached with front-facing garages and driveways. Next slide, please. More evidence of the pattern on the street. Next slide, please. So this is basically a briefing of what we have. We believe our variances are minor in nature, and it's keeping with the development and gentle intensification of the neighborhood by providing more affordable housing solutions for a well-diverse, amazing neighborhood. Next slide, please. This is, I already touched base. Next slide, please. So this is just showing the 3 reports that we have submitted, and we seek your support, and I am happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Questions from the panel? Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My comment and question is directed to the agent, Ms. Almatno. I realize the personal sort of reason that you've explained for the need for the garage, the front-facing garages. And you're well aware probably of the city's policy direction in trying to discourage more driving, more garages, more cars, more driving, more congestion. And I just wondered if you had, if you've analyzed, if there's a demonstrated need, a really need for front-facing garage, given particularly the location of this site that's near Future Road train station and within 6 to 8 minute walking distance on average to a light rail.
Through you, Mr. Chair, thank you so much for your questions. Yes, we have. The reason why is the client actually works and she needs the car to go pick up her kids from daycare, so drop off and gets the kids from daycare. So a car is the need at the same time. So we felt by having the integral garage, it will hide the car from the street, so it won't be like a visible distraction. So we have this garage, so like the car won't be on the street, and we have a single driveway width. And this is why we separated the driveways to reduce the impact of, driveways and cars parking. So you see from our proposal, so they are separated to reduce the impact. So that was the reason why they needed the car. However, on weekends and on daily, they will be walking definitely, because it's an amazing neighborhood. Everything is available in walking distance. But unfortunately, for working circumstances, both parents work and they need to put the kids in daycare.
Thank you. Other questions?
For you, Madam Chair, perhaps Ms. Linker might have the answer to this. So Dovercourt is, I mentioned, the agent mentioned the safety of children, and it just occurred to me, I was just wondering, Dovercourt is quite a busy street from my recollection of, it's a very long street. So I was just curious if you had any information of speed on that street to lend any further evidence to the agent's remarks.
Thank you for your question. I'm not sure of the speed on which the street is.
Or whether it's an arterial or what, yeah, that would answer me too.
Sorry, I'm just looking that up right now.
Yep, take your time. I don't have any questions after that, Mr. Chair.
I believe that this street is designated as a local road.
Thank you. Other questions?
Here.
Oh, Mr. Blatherwick.
We have the block face schematic put up with that shows the number of garages that front facing garages that currently exist on that piece of Dovercourt Avenue.
It's coming.
Yeah, it takes time.
Through you, Mr. Chair, 34 properties were on the streets of the 54 that provided front-facing attached garage. Slide number 7.
Mr. Blatherwick, which were you looking for the
actual schematic that shows the Dovercourt with the front facing garages that exist?
This one? Yes. Okay.
Right. So my question is to Ms. Linker, and as you know, Ms. Linker, we've been dealing with the streetscape character analysis section of the bylaw for a while. However, I look at this block face of Dovercourt, and to me, the established predominant pattern on the street right now is houses with front-facing garages. So it sort of puts me in a bit of a quandary, because I understand the rationale behind the SCA, but I'm looking at the evidence presented by the applicant's agent, and quite frankly, I don't think I can oppose front-facing garages given what exists in that block face of Dovercourt right now. Just wondering if the department has any comments regarding what seems to be the established pattern on the street and their objection to front-facing garages given the evidence we have before us.
Thank you for your question. Through you, Mr. Chair. The streetscape character analysis, as you're aware, encompasses 21 of the surrounding lots. And I think that number was taken into account to capture the immediate vicinity around the subject site. So anything beyond 21 lots would not be considered the immediate vicinity. Within the immediate vicinity, staff believe that it's clear that many of these dwellings, if they do have parking that leads to interior side yard or to the rear yard, and that the front facade of the building is dominated by windows in the principal entrance, whereas the subject design is having a facade that is dominated by a front-facing attached garage, and that pushes livable space upwards and towards the rear. And staff believe that that's a break of character of the street and impacts the public realm negatively when compared to the immediate vicinity.
Thank you, Ms. Linker. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Other questions from the panel? No. So I think we have Ms. Linker cut in. We have already transitioned into presentation by planning staff, but anything else you have to add other than what you've already given in response to questions?
Thank you for the question. Staff have no further comments.
So any other comments of planning staff? We have, oh my goodness, item 3. We have no registered speakers. And is there anybody who wishes to speak to this item? No. Okay, so we will go back to the agent for the applicant to have the final word.
I just would like to add that we have 2 signed letters of support, and we have surveyed the neighborhood door to door. Most of the neighbors were in support of our application. Some of them did not feel comfortable signing letters, as well as I have contacted the Westboro community to inform them about our applications to seek their support. We haven't heard back from them. It's really an important item for our clients, and we are here before you to seek your support for this application. As you are aware, we have applied for a building permit already, and the clients and the family are eager to move into this neighborhood. So this is all what I could say at this moment.
Thank you. And the conditions that would be applied, are you okay with those? No objection?
Yes, we are no objection to all of the comments that's received, including the right of way that Bell is requesting at the rear of the property.
Right, and the Bell Canada easement. Okay.
Correct.
Anything else? Nothing. So then we will we'll reserve this decision, I assume. Yes, so we'll be reserving this decision. So you will receive the written decision within 10 days.
Thank you so much, Mr.
Thank you
Chair,
very much.
Thank you.
The next item on our agenda, we have already dealt with items 4 and 5. So we're going to item 6 now, which is 407, 409, and 411 Queen Street. And where are we here? The agents for the applicants are Tamara Nahal and Jacob Balduc.
Hello, Mr. Chair. I'm Tamara Nahal.
So yeah, I mean, this was fairly complicated. So I think if you'll, your full but under 5-minute presentation would be welcome.
Of course. Yes. If the committee, if the coordinator could pull up my presentation deck. Perfect. There it is. Great. Thank you, committee. And
Sorry to interrupt, Mr. Chair. Could we do the amendments to the notice to the application first? Thank you.
Yes, you're right. Thank you. So the variances have changed several times during the process. So my understanding of what's before us today, who is the planning staff person on this one? Because they should also confirm this, I think.
That would be Ms. Linker.
Oh, that's you? Okay, so this can be to both. So we believe now that the variances are to 407 Queen. A would be to permit 1 front yard parking space. It used to say 2. And yeah. Deleting B because that's no longer needed, which had to do with landscaping of 0.5 meter. That's correct. And then 409 Queen, I think everything stands as is, referring to one parking space in F. And then 411 Queen G had said permit 2 parking spaces, but should now say permit 1 parking space. And I think the width is, this is the same. H, the same thing, should go to 1 parking space. I is 1 parking space, and the landscaping, which is J, stays. Is this correct?
I can pull out my laptop. I don't have
Okay.
I didn't have that printed out, but I do believe I provided a marked up version to the committee coordinator. And I had reviewed that, so.
On the notice, yeah, one of the reasons we're going through this is on the marked up version, those 2s had persisted where 1s ought to be, we
I see.
believe.
Let me pull that up just a moment. Oh, I'm seeing I didn't save it on my computer. Is there a way to pull it up on the screen behind you at all?
You're referring to the Word document?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, just want to confirm that what the chair is saying is accurate to my knowledge.
Meetings would be half the length of Zoom's sharing facility. Was that reasonably quick?
Sure.
Mr. Bolduc, that's who you've joined us. Thank you. And I noticed on the next page that the applicant may be on remotely, Karen Rowan, as well.
Oh, I was able to pull it up on my phone. So
Okay.
just to reiterate, we were discussing whether the notice was accurate or.
Here it comes.
Yep, there it is.
So you see what we are seeing is,
Yes.
so A has 2 and we need to change that to 1. You can go bring it up on your phone and just match them.
Yep. Yes, that's correct.
All right. And B disappears, is deleted.
For 407, yes, that's correct. That can
Okay.
be deleted.
And C, D, E, and F stand as is.
9. Yes, that's correct.
Oh, these are actually lettered differently than what I have here. So I'll read off of here. So then. Yes, so then under 411, it should say permit 1 parking space, not 2.
Yes, that's
For
correct.
H and I. And J. Right? Should be 1, and then that landscaping stays, which is now K.
Yes, that's
Is this
correct.
now correct?
Yes.
Just one question, Mr. Chair. So it does G, does that have to name the number of spots to permit front yard parking? Or does it, I seem to recall one of the applications or notices said something about specifying the number.
Mr. Chair, I can confirm that it'll read to permit 1 front yard parking space.
Ms. Linker, you concur that this is, that we are looking at, which just, we want to check all of the boxes here.
Thank you for the question. I'm reading the Word document sent by the agent, and I agree with that version. And I hope that that's what matches the version that you're reading.
And that matches what we've just said. Okay. All right,
Yes.
so now we have some idea what we are being asked to vary, so we can continue with the presentation. Thank you.
Very good. And if I could request my slide deck be pulled up again.
It was there and then it has disappeared.
Excellent. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, committee members and chair. I'm here as the client is requesting a minor variance to permit front yard parking, reduce parking space dimensions, and reduce landscape buffers at 407, 409, and 411 Queen Street. The original file came to committee and we requested an adjournment to address not only city concerns from the forester, but as well as a letter we had received from the community association. So since that original submission, we have reduced the amount of front yard parking from 5 to 3 spaces across the 3 sites. And we have increased the number of trees planted from 2 to 3, and all 3 trees are now proposed to be street trees. Next slide, please. The subject sites are located on the north side of Queen Street and are occupied by 3 multi-unit dwellings in converted single detached homes. Next slide, please. 1 parking space per property is proposed. On 409 and 411 Queen Street, the private approach and drive aisle have been consolidated so that they now share a private approach so as to reduce the number of curb cuts. Next slide, please. The amount of paved surface will be reduced and replaced with soft landscaping, including trees. Next slide, please. This image is marked up to show that there will be a 111% increase in the amount of landscaped area from 65 square meters to 137 square meters. The 38 square meters in front of 407 Queen Street will be maintained as it exists today. 1 tree per property is proposed between the sidewalk and front yard parking space. This both screens the parking space and adds 3 trees to the street tree, 3 street trees to the city's balance. Next slide, please. The private approaches will be consolidated and narrowed, which will reduce the curb cuts. And I've shown the reduction in one area goes from 11 to 3 meters and another goes from 5.6 to 3.6 meters. Next slide, please. So the table on the screen shows the requested relief across all 3 sites. The dimensions of the front yard parking spaces that are sought to be reduced for 409 and 411 are consistent with the compact car parking space sizes from parking lots. And that's what guided the size of these parking spaces. 407 Queen Street meets the minimum size requirements, so relief is not requested. Relief from the minimum width of landscaped area abutting a street is required for both 409 and 411 Queen Street. The landscape buffers in front of these 2 properties are irregular in shape. They're not consistently 3 meters in width, but do vary. And the requested relief was previously needed for 407 Queen Street, and as we just discussed, no longer. And that's because we removed one of the front yard parking spaces, replaced it with landscaped area and a street tree. And now that buffer exceeds the required minimum. Next slide, please. Next, I'll go through the 4 tests of a minor variance, starting with whether it meets the general intent and purpose of the official plan. So the site is designated Parliament and Confederation Boulevard Special District. The official plan provides direction on protection of national symbols, and the proposed development is not anticipated to result in adverse impacts on any of these national symbols. Next slide, please. The minor variances requested are related to parking space dimensions, parking location, and landscape buffer widths. I mentioned before the reduced parking sizes are consistent with compact car provisions in parking lots. And then to mitigate impacts resulting from the front yard parking that we've sought, we've actually placed a tree in front so as to provide a bit of screening, and the client has agreed to resod that land so that the landscaping can be improved. And relief is also requested from the minimum landscape buffer for the 2 sites due to those irregularly shaped landscaped area. This comes out of a result of consolidating the drive aisle and
creating one private approach to be shared between those two sites. So we get kind of an unusual shape that gives us enough soil volume to support a small tree, which was a really important request from the infill forester. And then in conclusion, we find that the minor variance meets the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw. Next slide, please. And then next up is whether it is a desirable and appropriate use of the land. Through the multiple revisions, we have made many upgrades to the proposed design. The parking layout and design are a significant improvement to what exists there today. It improves the landscaping on the site. It adds 3 new street trees, and that will all increase the urban canopy. So we find that is appropriate use of the land. Next slide, please. And the last test, whether it is minor in nature. The proposed variance is minor in nature because it is required to legalize 3 parking spaces, but it does make significant improvements to the parking design and layout, as well as the landscaping. The proposed parking is sensitively designed to mitigate for any potential impacts on the surrounding HCD and adjacent properties. And the number of front yard parking spaces has also been reduced, both from what exists currently and from the previous application. We've also made multiple design changes in collaboration with city staff, including those in right of way, Ms. Linker, and the infill forester. And the variance is not expected to generate any undue adverse impacts on neighboring properties. Next slide, please. And that's everything on my end for the presentation. And I also wanted to thank staff for all of their hard work on this. We have been meeting with them and discussing it for quite a few months, and I think we're really happy with where we wound up. So happy to answer any questions now.
Thank you. Questions from, I don't know.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is to planning staff, Ms. Linker. In the planning report, I'd like to understand the statement that's made that says might be able to benefit. This is talking about the parking from section 109 brackets 5 that permits 1 front yard parking space per lot historically. Given what appears to be a contrary view from heritage staff, what does that mean? Might be able to benefit?
Thank you for your question. Through you, Mr. Chair. There was a bylaw that existed previously that permitted 1 parking space per lot for the subject sites. And through conversations with zoning staff, staff believed that this property would have benefited from that old bylaw prior to the conversions that occurred, and staff felt comfortable of allowing it to continue to benefit non-officially from those provisions of the old bylaw, and staff encouraged the applicant to still go through this process to legalize those spaces, as we haven't gone down the path of confirming legal non-compliance.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess that my question, I believe, would be for the agent, although maybe it's Ms. Linker. I'm just curious about the perpendicular choice of design of parking. When we look at parking, typically if we don't want to see the emphasis of the vehicle, seeing it perpendicular kind of makes it a little more obvious. Can you speak to that, please?
Yeah, happy to speak to that. That came as a result of a suggestion from right-of-way staff. We met with Rob Ipma, and he suggested that the current configuration had a very wide curb cut. If you're walking on Queen Street, the sidewalk dips and stays lowered to the street level for a very long time. And as I'm sure you can imagine, if you're walking with a stroller, those constant curb dips are pretty hazardous when it's icy. And as well, it creates it encourages people to drive or over the sidewalk. So the intent here was to narrow the private approach as much as possible and then share that approach between the two. Whereas currently the situation is 3 cars just drive up onto those 2 properties to park among them. So the somewhat unusual approach was it started as a way to narrow the private approach. And then as we started talking to Ms. Young, she recommended that if we arrange the layout a little more specifically to get a minimum soil volume of 20 cubic meters, then we could support a small tree. So after we kind of got to that point, it was sort of a reinforcing strategy. So although we do have the sideways cars where you see, a longer length of them rather than the shorter, narrower end, we also, because of this design, are able to actually introduce trees to the sites where previously we wouldn't be able to do that. There just wouldn't be the soil volumes because we're assuming, not too deep. We can't go too deep. And then there's hydro wires that also run parallel to the sidewalk. So the actual space constraints for where you can plant a tree, they're quite limited because we have to be a 1.5 meters setback from those hydro wires, which pretty much, when you take into account all those things, the only way we could really fit everything that we felt was a good design and improvement on the landscaping was this, sideways car parking for the 3 proposed. So I think the overall consequences, if you look at the site today, there are 2 cars that do park sideways in front of 407, I believe. Yes, 407. That's been reduced to 1. So although we do have 3 cars that will be parked sideways, currently there are 3 that are parked straight in and 2 that park sideways. So the net increase, 1 more car parked sideways, but it'll be a net decrease of cars in front yard parking. So
I have a second question, if I may, Mr. Chair. Is there rear yard parking available at 407?
yes, there is rear yard parking, and the applicant, we've discussed a few times whether the rear yard parking is meeting their needs for their tenants, and they have advised us that they would have liked to keep all the front yard parking that they had, so all 5 spaces. But through the revisions, we did find that we felt that three front yard parking spaces would achieve not only the landscaping goals while mitigating the issues associated with front yard parking. So there is rear yard parking behind one of the buildings. However, 2 of the buildings are very close to an ongoing development project. So there are no rear yards for 2 of the properties. If you pull up my slide deck, slide 3, you can actually see this for 411 and 409. They don't functionally have rear yards. The setback from the buildings are very, very minimal. So you can see here, the only property with rear yard parking available is 407 to the right. And then the space between 407 and 409 is actually used for garbage pickup. They have public, they receive city waste and recycling pickup. And because of how narrow Queen Street is, my understanding is the garbage truck actually pulls into this aisle to load the garbage bins. So they are looking to preserve that as more of a loading servicing lane. So the access to the parking would be to the right of the property. And then between those 2 buildings is where the garbage pickup staging effectively happens. And so the client is advised that it's very challenging to ensure that someone parks there and keeps it clear, so they don't really allow people to park there. Otherwise, their garbage doesn't get picked up, which is quite a nuisance if you miss 1 week with tenanted buildings.
So, sorry to follow up. So how many rear parking spots are available at 407?
We haven't counted them, but I'd say maybe a handful, 3, 4. I think it would be lower in the winter because the snow gets piled there. So I'd say perhaps 3 in the winter and maybe a maximum of 4 in the summer. I'll also confirm with the client that they have tenants with leases that have parking in them. So they would be looking at ensuring those tenants continue to have parking. And they have advised they have 4 tenants with parking in their leases. So we would be looking to have to ensure that they continue to have those have their leases upheld. So, okay.
Other questions? Mr. Blatherwick?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If we could have that schematic back up online or on the screen, please. So I'm looking at these 3 homes and the new parking configuration in front of them. And my question to the FOTEN rep is, what kind of vertical measures are going to be installed internally on the site, and quite frankly, along the edge of the sidewalk, and main access sidewalk for the single dwelling on the single lot to absolutely prevent anybody from parking where they're not supposed to park. I mean, I appreciate that you've reduced the amount of front yard parking. I'm still not very happy with it. But unless you put vertical measures in that prevent anybody from parking where that green space exists on this schematic, then we're back to the same we can be back to the same situation that exists there now. So what are you going to do to ensure that illegal parking cannot be reestablished on this site if we were to accept this application and grant it?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for the question. I think the street trees would be step one. So the zoning bylaw does speak to using trees or I believe bench, very large rock as examples of how you prevent parking encroachment. So because each site has a street tree, that would preclude someone from parking there. And as well, so the two buildings on the left are actually divided by a property line, but because they are all owned by the same owner, they would share the access. So it looks like just one of the lines didn't show up on this image. I traced over it because I know it's always a little faded on the screen. So to explain a little bit more, to the far left of the screen, 411, there is a new development going up, and that will have its own drive aisle. So you won't be able to go much further west. There is the walkway to the far left of the screen. You realistically wouldn't be parking your car on the walkway, or the property management company would be quite upset. And as well, yes, thank you for zooming in. So for the left side on 411, there's a walkway. There's some steps that are made out of rock. And as well, the garden borders are all currently made out of rocks and are about a foot high. You wouldn't really be able to park there, and there are existing bushes and shrubs. So you wouldn't really be able to squeeze more cars in there because of the street trees. And anyone who tried to park outside of this would quickly encounter a shrub with their door. So I think most people would not want to hit the shrub with their car. And as well, the space between 411 and 409 is very, very narrow. There's balconies that exist, there's steps. So between the landscaping features, the landscape steps, the porches, the shrubs, there's quite a bit of existing landscaping that exists on the site as it stands today. And adding the street trees will pretty much create a funnel to ensure people aren't parking where they shouldn't be. So I think we've worked with our urban design team at FO10 to prepare this, and they've taken into account the existing landscaping, and one of which is quite significant. If we pan to the right a little bit to show 407, there's a section that's labeled bush. There is a very large, what appears to be juniper bush in front of 407. It's in front of the building to the left of where it says main access. So that would also be very hard to park in front of because it's quite significant in size. So my understanding would be the zoning bylaw, because it does provide a tree as a way to prevent front yard parking and all of the existing landscaping, that would make it very challenging to pretty much park where you're not supposed to, based on this site plan.
So on what I'm looking at here, to the left of that small tree and to the immediate left of the main access, that yard right there is bordered by what?
There's a hydro pole right at the corner of the sidewalk and the landscaped area. We could go back to the client and ask about maybe some more shrub plantings in front of the bush to prevent any parking or other landscape features. I don't believe I think right now we have 3 street trees, and any more would start to compete, would start to get pretty full. I think my colleague Jacob has something to add.
Yeah, sorry, thank you. No, with respect to the area in front of the bush at 407, I mean, there's the hydro pole. There's also no existing curb cut or depressed curb in that location, so it's not an existing entrance, which obviously means that we're not having to reinstatement and commit to a reinstatement that would create a physical barrier. So it's an existing condition between the bush, which does not allow for enough room for a legal parking space, as well as the hydro pole, as well as the fact that there's no existing curb cut. And that is existing green space that we'd be looking to maintain. So there's no proposed change to that area. And we believe the existing as well as proposed physical barriers can ensure that there will not be.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Those are my questions.
Thank you. Other questions? Actually, I have, let's go to John again. I have a couple. One quick one. So when you showed one of these, there's a heritage overlay over that property. Does that have any implications for this? Is it a heritage designated in any way?
We did look into this. It is part of a heritage overlay, but the proposed changes wouldn't fall under the provisions in the zoning bylaw. So the scope of a heritage overlay wouldn't apply to the changes we're
It's just
proposing.
building envelope.
Precisely, and the building envelopes aren't being proposed to be
And
changed.
it's not, is it in a heritage district?
It is not. I don't believe so.
One said yes, one said no.
Yeah, sorry, no, it's a very
half
strange
in
area.
and half out.
I did work on one of the buildings in the area. It's a strange little pocket called the Cathedral Hill area, and there is an HCD, but there's actually no implementing, to my knowledge, there's no plan. So it's an HCD without a plan effectively. So I did note that heritage staff did comment on the application and didn't have any concerns. So
Yeah, no concerns, yeah.
we through the process with right of way and planning and forestry and everybody, we were kind of waiting to see if there was going to be any heritage considerations. But like I said, what the goal of the project is to take when we took it on is obviously it's a not a great condition as is. It's very functional for the client. It provides a lot of parking and it's been there for about 20 years. The city flagged that, hey guys, this is a bit of an issue here and you should look to rectify it. So through working with staff, we tried to come up with a solution that was agreeable. And again, if these houses had not been converted to low-rise apartment buildings and they remained as single detached homes, I believe that would be the legal noncompliance that Ms. Linker was speaking to, that if they had remained single detached homes, they may have been able to benefit from that bylaw and have a front yard parking space. But simply by the virtue of the fact that they are not considered single detached homes, they are low-rise apartment buildings, despite their form as converted dwellings, they no longer benefit from it. So we did look at other, we actually had other applications on Queen Street, just across the street, to legalize front yard parking. And that's one of the first things that we did was look for legal nonconformity. And then as a result of, we were successful on the other side of the street. On this side, not so much. We didn't have the same legal leg to stand on. So in this case, we said, okay, what can we do with an existing situation that is less than ideal? That is obviously not a lot of soft landscaping, and find a way to make it better that generally meets what the zoning bylaw is aiming for. And we, again, to echo my colleague, Mr. Howell, we really appreciated staff working with us on this. We had several meetings, and we think we landed somewhere that works for all parties. Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure the heritage staff had seen this and had no issues with it. They're pretty overwhelmed right now with the heritage registry issues. So if you got them to comment at all, that's pretty good. My final question is the issue of screening the parking spaces. So the solution is proposed to be screening them with trees, but a tree's up in the air. So the tree is going to screen the building, not the parking. Is there any plan to have an understory that actually screens the parking spaces?
We actually did discuss this with Ms. Young, and she indicated that the city is not prepared to take on the maintenance associated with non-trees. So shrubs, we had originally had discussed whether shrubs were an option, and she said the city does not assume liability and responsibility for shrubs in the public right of way. So as a result, she has recommended trees. And I will mention that the trees will be shorter varieties due to the hydro overhead wire. So although they won't be screening the very low car as much as a shrub could, I think the overall intent of providing a tree between the sidewalk and the car still meets a degree of screening, but I think you're correct. The majority of the tree's bulk is higher than a car is. So we did go back and forth on it, but ultimately the city wasn't interested in assuming responsibility for a
There's no
shrub.
part of your property that's available for ornamental grass, or, well, their property, the one that you're representing.
We could certainly bring this back to the client and see if they're interested in it. The challenge that I did speak to the client about this because I had anticipated something like this as well. And she advised that in the past, anytime they provided any kind of delicate plantings near the sidewalks, they get chewed up either by the snowplows in the summer or in the winter, or just by the salting routine. And just, they've tried installing things adjacent to the sidewalk and it's been with very
Yeah,
limited
I meant
success.
more near the parking space itself, which I think is
Yeah.
within the client's property by that point. But
Yeah, the challenge too is if you plant anything too tall and it gets in the way of the door swing, you will decapitate a very nice plant.
I'll leave it as a suggestion rather than something that influences our discussion here. So if there's not anything else from, yes?
Right,
Yes,
Mr.
go.
Chair, I have a question. Can you confirm that in your presentation, you mentioned your intention to increase the green aspect of the properties?
Yes.
And so in that context, is there any thought given, or would you consider pervious surface to the parking areas?
I think we could inquire with our client. My understanding is the parking areas are, I don't know if they're actually asphalt. I did visit the site, but it was the winter, so hard to confirm. So I can certainly bring this back to them and see if they'd be interested in an impervious parking surface. In my experience on files, especially, you know, smaller parking areas, the cost is often, I've been told it's quite prohibitive. So that's my only caution is often that's the chief complaint I get.
Thank you.
Other questions for the applicant? No. So the planner on this application is that you, Ms. Linker? So comments?
Thank you. Staff don't have any further comments. We've been working with the applicants for almost a year now and have addressed a lot of concerns from right-of-way and from forestry and from planning staff. And we've got into a stage where none of the staff have any concerns with the proposal as it stands now.
Thank you. Questions for Ms. Linker for planning? Okay, so we have one registered speaker from the Dalhousie Community Association, Debbie Barton. I'm sure you know how this works, so name, address, turn on the microphone. Oh, okay. So yes, turn on the microphone. That's the button, and
Yes.
give your name and your municipal address.
Hi, thanks for the opportunity to participate here. My name is Debbie Barton, and I'm here on behalf of the Dalhousie Community Association, which represents this portion of Somerset Ward. And this year we celebrate our 40 years of active community stewardship. That includes reviewing and commenting on applications and their impact on neighborhoods and the public realm. We sent a letter to you on February the 2nd, strongly objecting to this application, which originally asked to legalize 6 front yard parking spaces. We continue to hold our position despite revisions to the site plan made in response to the department comments. We assert that the revised application fails to meet the 4 tests. And we note the following: both the official plan and the zoning bylaw prohibit front yard parking. The proponent has established that the site has no legal non-conforming rights for front yard parking. And the subject property is located in an area where there is no parking required. However, the zoning bylaw does make clear that when parking is provided, it must be concealed from the street. The public realm takes precedent. City staff note that the zoning bylaw and the OP are explicit in prioritizing soft landscaping and emphasizing the built form relationship with the public realm. This site is well served by transit, given its location within 200 meters of an LRT station and a bi-directional bike path at the doorstep. OC Transpo runs many buses on Slater and Albert Street, just a block away from this site. The fact that front yard parking has been allowed to encroach over the years does not provide a reasonable rationale for the city to enshrine this poor use of much needed green space. The committee now has an opportunity to ensure that front yard parking does not become a default use, particularly in areas so well served by transit and cycling. It is particularly egregious that the parking configurations proposed emulates what's typical of commercial parking lots where the vehicles are parked parallel to the street, exposing the cars lengthwise towards the public realm. While vehicles parked in the front yard having vehicles parked in front yard occupying valuable green space is in no way a minor variance in terms of the impact on the public realm. The site can easily provide 3 parking spaces at the rear, 2 at the rear at 407, which was actually shown in the first iteration of the planning of the planning report. There was a figure 3 you would have in your initial documents. And another one could go in the driveway between 407 and 409, as you've previously seen. So we support the regreening of the right-of-ways, and in concert with the Heritage Planning Branch, we recommend removal of all front yard parking and a return to what historically existed until recently with green front yards and mature trees. I actually have a picture of what it looked like many years ago. This was an article in our local Buzz, it's called, our local community newspaper, in 1938, which you might be interested in seeing what the street looked like at that time. It's quite interesting. So we support the regreening of the right-of-ways in concert with the Heritage Planning Branch, and we recommend removal. I think I've said that. Reinstating most of the front yard with soft landscaping and adding a 4th large growing tree in front of 407 Queen, as recommended by Planning Forestry, would enhance the quality of the public realm and enrich the pedestrian experience. It will also provide much needed short-term parking for guests and visitors to the area once the curbs in the front of the site have been reinstated as per the right-of-way management comments, which you have before you. This transact provides opportunities for much infill housing, and which we welcome. But we also need to improve our public realm at every opportunity. And this is an opportunity. So we hope that you're taking this opportunity. And we trust that you will agree and deny this request to legalize 3 front yard parking spaces. If I could add one.
Thank you.
Oh, my time is up.
Perhaps. I mean, do you have something very short?
Just a comment in terms of, you were asking about the historical. There is, oh, where did I see that now? There is a historical overlay. There's a separate conservation area that was
Yeah, the
indicated.
heritage overlay in the zoning.
There's
bylaw,
heritage
which was,
overlay, but there was actually
the heritage
it's
district,
Cathedral Hill. No, there's a Cathedral Hill historical.
heritage conservation
Yeah.
district, correct?
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
So, I don't think there's anything else. It goes to you for the final word. There were conditions on this? Are you okay with the conditions?
There are no conditions.
No conditions, okay.
Yeah, sorry, there's no conditions in the sense that it's a minor variance, but there are conditions with respect to, well, there's next steps in terms of going to the private approach bylaw.
Yeah.
And making sure that
That's not us.
you're reappropriating the right of way as required in our discussions with staff. Thank you.
And nothing else?
Just as a final statement, I'd like to say thank you to the community association. We got their comments on the previous hearing. It's part of the reason we adjourned it. Obviously, we heard concerns from staff and concerns from forestry and concerns in the community association. And so we do take those comments to heart. And I think we made changes to try to find a balance between our clients' needs with respect to parking. We do recognize that we are within a short proximity to the LRT. And we do encourage the tenants to use transit as much as possible. But of course, there is still for some people a need for a vehicle, whether that's for family reasons or for getting out of town on the weekends or for work or for different kinds of travel. So as planners, we do try to discourage, it's not so much as discouraging, so much as encouraging alternative forms of transportation and allowing for options for transit. And we hope that somebody would take those options, whether it's cycling or transit where possible, while allowing them to have a vehicle if that meets some of their needs, not necessarily day-to-day needs. So.
Thank you. And I assume there's nothing else from the panel, so we will reserve the decision, and as you know, 10 days, you will have a written decision available. Thank you. We now move to the final item on the agenda, which is item 7, 454 and 456 Nelson. Arto, you're in conflict, so you will be leaving the table, and the remaining 4 members will hear this one. So this was adjourned from February 21st. It's a conversion of a 2-story semi-detached into a low-rise apartment building with 8 units, and with 2 variances, which I'm sure will be described, but which have to do with the interior side yard setbacks and the rear yard setbacks. Michael Crapez is the agent for the applicant. There you are.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and honorable members of the committee. I am the applicant's architect and agent, Mark Crapez, 2521 Escarpment, Caledon. And one of the owners is with me to answer any questions. Can we put up the slide, please? Next slide, please. One more slide, please. There, thank you. As was described, Mr. Chair, the owners and applicants wish to renovate their existing 2.5-story brick-clad building that you see in this photograph in the middle behind the tree, and construct a 3-story addition to the rear of the double lot, and convert 2 3-bedroom residences built in 1925 to an 8-unit, 4-bedroom low-rise apartment dwelling. The owners who have lived in the residence for a few years will occupy one of the units upon completion. Both the applicant and myself, the architect, agree with staff's comments and have addressed and implemented all their recommendations. The applicant's minor variances requests are only setbacks, and staff now support the minor variances that we have worked with on just one of them after the adjournment. And we wish to thank staff, in particular Ms. Linkert, for working with us to find an acceptable setback to the one that was in question to the south that you see in the left of the photograph of the 3-story apartment that was built in 2012. So the immediate context you can see is comprised predominantly of medium height density already. The site adjacent to the rear of 454 and 456, the subject property, also is surrounded by mid-rise 3 stories. Many of these existing new low-rise apartments meet the need for the missing middle housing, which this proposal is also designed to meet. So, as I just said, this is the slide that shows the applicant's double lot with a combined lot width of 13.4 meters or 44 feet. The adjacent property to the left is 458 Nelson, the 3-story gray apartment building. And across the street, directly in front of the applicant's property, is the Sandy Hill Community Center and Park, a very large green space. Next slide, please. So the air photo below, Mr. Chairman and committee members, shows the immediate neighborhood context, which is comprised, as I said, mostly of mid to high density redeveloped site. You can see that by the photograph on your left, which shows the flat roofs of all the mid-rise apartments. The red arrow on the photo points to the applicant's property at 454 and 456. And then the site plan, which we will show on the next slide in larger detail, shows the applicant's 2 lots with the existing 2 semis in the front, which are the 2 white boxes. And then we show the addition that is the crossed hatch diagonal in the back. And since last meeting, we have also been cognizant of the garbage management requirements, and we've shown that on the bottom left of the site plan as well. And also bike storage is also shown on the plan. Could you show the next slide, please? So this is a very blown up plan of very simple proposal and site plan that is fairly easy to understand. As I mentioned, the 2 white boxes on the right are the existing 1925 residences that the applicants actually will renovate and not demolish. They are not designated heritage, and as you will see by the elevations later, we are trying to be sympathetic to the architecture, not only of the area, but of this current brick dwelling that is in fairly good condition. Next slide, please. So the drawing below, on the left side, is the front elevation of the applicant's 3-story renovation and addition. And then I have a rendering to the right, which shows the same elevation, showing the actual bright beige exterior stucco colors and how we will add that front entrance. So the color of the stucco will reflect the large amount of light with the sun hitting the applicant's light beige south side of the proposed infill apartment and reflecting it back to 458, which the applicant's buildings now are red brick, which don't reflect a lot of light. So we're cognizant of trying to reflect indirect light back to 458, which actually doesn't have any reflected light now because their windows face north that are on the back of the lot. So we've added some historical detailing as well. And next slide, please. So the photo to the left is actually 458 Nelson. You can see the very slitty horizontal window and 2 larger windows on the 3rd floor that we had to adjourn last week or 2 weeks ago to find out what was behind there because they didn't match the plans that we were supplied with. We've increased the setback that we originally had against this building to 0.9 meters, and the spaces that is on the 2nd and 3rd floor on our side. And there'll be no windows on our addition to the back. So as you can see, the photo in the middle is the present condition looking from Nelson Street, which was on a previous slide. And the photo on the right is actually showing the color of the stucco that I'd like to pick for and specify. So you can see the amount of light that will reflect back into that gray kind of wall. Next slide, please. So the other concern was staff needed to confirm the applicant's ownership of the easement and part 3 and 4 or joint use and maintenance agreements or equivalent that exist on title. And the applicant does confirm that there exists on title a joint use and maintenance agreement for the shared use of parts 3 and 4 of the easement between the two properties. Next slide, please. So there were two residential questions and concerns 2 weeks ago. One was, is this a rooming house? And the answer is no. We plan to conform to the 4-bedroom units. And was there waste management? And we plan to provide the waste management as specified on the site plan, which was a little hard to read, but we blew it up now and pointed out that we're meeting the requirement of the city and also adding bike storage. And the drawing to the right is an actual picture drawing of what the garbage enclosure will be. We would like to add that forestry has indicated there were no impacts from the addition, but the owners are keeping a tree in the back far corner, and it is the only tree that will provide shade that is about less than 30 centimeters in diameter, but we will protect it during the addition, and it will provide shade for the amenity space that's at the rear of the house. That is all. If you have any questions.
Thank you. Questions? Yes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a question with respect to the garbage. You don't provide a landscape plan. Will there be any type of path, like hard landscaping back to that garbage enclosure and the bike storage, or is it?
Well, yes, Madam, there is actually a paved driveway to the rear right now. We should have shown that there is a frame garage right where the garbage enclosure is. It's a double garage that basically we will demolish. That's also close to 100 years old, and we will re-landscape and resod the area, of course.
So there will be hard landscaping back to the garbage enclosure?
Yes, there will be, Matt.
Okay, and what kind of snow removal activity will you be doing in the middle of the winter?
Well, we don't have to. I believe there's snow removal of the laneway. The cars actually, a normal car actually does not fit to the back, so there isn't actually any parking spaces back there. The garage was for a time when cars were a lot narrower, but there is snow removal of the laneway to allow the garbage containers to be picked up.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? No. So just to reiterate, the rear yard, except for the garbage enclosure and the bike storage, is to be soft landscaping?
Yes, it is.
Thank you. And is there any parking planned on site?
No, sir, there is not. And that is the existing condition as well.
So we would next hear any more remarks from the city planner?
Thank you. Through conversations with the applicant has revised the plans to address our concerns regarding the proposed interior side yard setback on the one side, and that has addressed staff's concerns.
Thank you. Questions, Ms. Linker? No? Okay. Is there anybody registered? Yes, so we have a resident, David Collister, registered to speak remotely. Is he online?
Yes, that's correct.
There you are.
I have a presentation, if it could be put up, please.
Yep.
So thank you, Chair, and thank you for the opportunity to correct the record. I'm a resident with my family at 444 Nelson, just a few doors down, and not surprisingly, not included in the in the pictures of the immediate environment. Can we go to slide 2, please? So I wanted to show here what the neighborhood looked like 10 years ago when we finished building our home. All the red circles are what is classically considered missing middle. These were all detached homes and townhomes. And then the city permitted an egregious use of loopholes with respect to conversions, which I'm sure this committee is aware of, that allowed these homes to be pulled down and replaced with essentially unlicensed rooming homes. Next slide. Oh, actually, just if you could just stay here for a moment. All the yellow circles here are conversions. The blue is the existing home in consideration. The three pink circles, those used to be missing middle housing. They were pulled down to create a purpose-built student housing. No issues with that student housing per se, but I do want to note that similar with the conversions, these have removed missing middle homes from the inventory, and they are not coming back so long as these conversions remain in place. Next slide. So, conversions, they exploited a loophole to permit renovations of older homes without needing to comply with bylaw. The intent of the conversion rules were to allow older homes to be renovated in the interior and to add extensions to create more housing. Instead, what unscrupulous property owners did with the support of the city was pull down entire homes, leaving a corner standing, and called that a conversion. They maximized the footprint of these lots, and they built so-called triplexes with 6 rooms per dwelling unit, and then an additional unit into the basement. So where there used to be missing middle housing, it was replaced with over 20 bedrooms on a lot, and increased on this block over a matter of 2-3 years, bedrooms by 250 or more. These, because they're unlicensed rooming houses, there's no oversight by the city. There's no access to the building for noise management. They're obviously not suitable for families because they're inside, they're essentially dorms, a long row of rooms and nothing else. And the rooms themselves go for around between 850 and 950 a room. So what any family or housekeeping unit who may want to consider renting a unit as a dwelling unit as a unit would be looking at paying $5,000 to $6,000 to access these units, which is equivalent of a mortgage for a 1.5 million house. So really, there's no other purpose for these buildings and these units other than to be unlicensed boarding homes. Next slide. Oh, and actually, sorry, just to jump up, just more for information. This was ground zero for the conversions. The very first house, 460 Nelson, was the first conversion that was permitted to use this loophole and set off the gold rush. Garbage is unmanaged. You can see pictures here of what the garbage situation is. City doesn't take any action unless we call, and it's become a full-time, well, it's become a second job to do it. Particularly egregious, 159 Henderson. We're instructing their tenants to just dump their garbage on the front lawn. Took 2 years to get the city to force them eventually to move the garbage to the back. And then another 2, but it was a Pyrrhic victory because they actually back onto my house and they didn't put any containers back there. So it took another 2 years to actually get them to containerize that garbage. But damage is done, and now the entire block is essentially a giant rat warren because of these conversions. Next slide. And health and safety has become a real concern because of the permission, because the city has permitted these bunkhouses and unlicensed rooming houses to be built and to continue to exist. The slide on the right, and it was initially a video, and it's unfortunate I'm not able to show it, but this is the new location of the Panda game after hours is at the corner of this block. Russell is a couple blocks down the street where the cars were turned over. and the assaults happened. So there was a heavy police presence there, and given the high density along this street, this is where the Panda Games after hours activities took place. The top slide there, this is from a couple years ago. One thing I want to note is that because of the large number of, oh, I see I'm at time. May I continue?
Yeah, you should wrap it up though.
Okay. Let me just say in terms of health and safety, and these are rented by rooms, is that it's no longer students living here. The top slide that I wanted to mention was a party the police had to shut down. A police officer was assaulted, and one of the roommates, who the other roommates didn't know, was found with a shotgun and drugs to distribute. So, that's the situation we're in. So if we could just jump to the second last slide, then. You can keep going. And I'll just summarize. I guess we do not see in our neighborhood that this is a what's the word, is a desirable development. The property owners initially wanted to come forward with 5 bedrooms per unit. Given the size of the units, it's obviously just going to be another bunk room. No one is going to want to move in as a housekeeping unit and pay $5,000 per unit to live there. With the 4 units, it's going to drop down to $4,000. But again, that's a mortgage to live in a bunkhouse with 7 other dorm units. It replaces 2 missing middle type units with 32 bedrooms. And I guess my one question that I would like to know, and I would like to hear maybe from the applicant, if possible, is absent the variances, how many bedrooms could be put into this building? And I think that's something that we would be very interested to know, to the extent to which the variances are being used to maximize occupancy. Thanks.
Thank you. Questions? Mr. Blatherwick? No? Okay. Thank you very much. Yeah, so the final word goes to the applicant's agent.
Thank you very much. We appreciate the presentation and the problems that the one neighbor has indicated, and we want to ensure that the double lot meets all of the requirements for an 8-unit, 4-bedroom, low-rise infill apartment. We have been cognizant to design it for single-family use with living room, bedrooms that are an adequate size, not for a rooming house as he describes it. And we have also designed something that we feel will add to the community and the mature neighborhood atmosphere of the rest of Ottawa, rather than some of the examples that he has presented, which our proposal does not even closely imitate. So therefore, we will say to the applicant that we will say to the neighbor that we understand and are cognizant of some of these other places that he has indicated are not in conformance with the applicable garbage removals or noise and things like that. The applicant himself and herself will be living in the unit, have one of those units there. So obviously they will be themselves managing against any of these issues that were outlined, that even as an architect, I can understand is not the intent of the intensification of the architecture. It's meant to accommodate people that unfortunately have nowhere to live. And the units themselves are designed for single family single families, not all students. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any final questions? Okay, seeing none, as with the others, we will reserve the decision and you'll have the written decision within 10 days.
Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. And that concludes the hearing. And I think we are ready to be done. So the members will stick around for the discussions.